Let me begin with a question. Have you ever looked at a company and thought they did everything right? So how did this go wrong? And that's why the story of Nokia matters. Not because it failed, but because it failed slowly, quietly, and reasonably. Did you know that Nokia is more than 160 years old? In 1865, Nokia was founded by Frederick Idestam, a mining engineer. Not a visionary technologist, not a futurist, a practical man. He built a paper mill beside a river in Finland, the Nokian Virta. Paper, inks, books, newspapers. Nokia didn't begin with innovation. It began with service. It existed to help information travel, and that purpose never really changed. Only the medium did. And over the next century, Nokia transformed itself again and again. And did you know Nokia once made rubber boots, tires, gas masks, industrial cables, electric equipment? And for decades, Nokia wasn't just one company. It was a collection of industries. And if you lived in Finland in the mid-1900s, you wore Nokia boots. Your home likely ran on Nokia cables. And this matters because Nokia learned something early. Survival belongs to those who adapt, not those who cling. And reinvention became Nokia's muscle memory. And here's a quiet danger that when reinvention works repeatedly, you start to believe it will always work, even when timing changes. Now let's talk about how Nokia moved into telecommunications. Did you know that Finland's geography pushed Nokia there? Finland is a large, sparsely populated, cold and difficult to wire. Cables were expensive and maintenance was brutal. Wireless wasn't innovation, it was survival. In the 1960s, Nokia began investing in radio transmission, telecommunications infrastructure. By the 1970s and 80s, Nokia helped build Nordic Mobile Telephone, NMT, one of the world's first international cellular systems. So they didn't start as a device company. They started as a communications company. And that is why their rise later was so fast. They weren't guessing. They were working on decades of invisible work. Did you know that Nokia nearly collapsed in the early 1990s? Too many businesses, too many distractions, too many bets. Leadership faced a brutal choice: protect the past or cut it loose. So they chose focus. They sold off paper, rubber, consumer electronics, anything that wasn't telecom. And they went all in on mobile phones and networks. No safety net, no backup plan, and it worked. So lesson number one is focus hurts, but hesitation kills. By 1998, Nokia became the world's largest mobile phone manufacturer. Let me pause here, because this is where many people in this room recognize themselves. Did you know that Nokia controlled up to 40% of the global phone market? Phones like the 3310 weren't just popular, they were trusted. Did you know that Nokia 3310 sold over 126 million units? It didn't just work, it lasted. And inside Nokia, engineers were respected, decisions were fast, and people felt secure. And if you worked there in your 30s or your 40s, you felt something precious. I found my place. Now let me talk personally for a moment, because this is where I recognize myself too. I'm in my mid-40s, and by day I work in IT leadership in the manufacturing industry. I spent 20 years in organizations that were competent, that were structured, that were successful, that were respected. And for a long time, I believed something very comforting. If I worked hard, stay professional, and do the right thing, things would work out. And mostly they did. But over the years, I've noticed something uncomfortable. Not chaos, not incompetence, something quieter. Meetings where risks were softened, concerns were delayed, difficult truths were rephrased until they sounded harmless. People weren't dishonest, they were being careful. And I realized something that Nokia's story later confirmed for me. You don't lose relevance by being bad. You lose it by being too reasonable for too long. So back to Nokia. By the mid-2000s, phones stopped being hardware and they became software. And did you know that Nokia engineers already knew Symbian was struggling? The software was hard to build on. It was fragmented and not designed for touch. And did you know that Nokia had touchscreens prototypes before the iPhone? They did. So what stopped them? Nothing dramatic. And that's the most dangerous thing. When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, Nokia wasn't impressed. And honestly, they had reasons. Did you know that early iPhones had no App Store, no MMS, no copy-paste, and on specs, Nokia still looked strong. But Apple changed expectations, not features. Phones became experiences. And Nokia, brilliant at scale and efficiency, it struggled with speed and reinvention at the same time. So this is where the hardest part of the story goes. Former Nokia leaders later admitted, bad news was delayed, risks were softened, and people feared being seen as blockers. There were no shouting, there were no villains, just silence. I've learned it the hard way too. Silence feels safe until it becomes permanent. In organization, it happens in careers and in your meetings. So the lesson number 2 is silence doesn't keep you safe. It only delays the cost. In 2011, Nokia's partnership with Microsoft was bold. Drop everything, bet on Windows Phone, and the Lumia phones were beautiful. The cameras were excellent, but the ecosystem don't wait for courage to catch up. So by 2013, Nokia sold its phone business. So let me slow this down, because this isn't a history lesson, it's a mirror. Lesson 1 is reinvention works until it becomes assumed. Nokia reinvented itself over a century. That success created confidence. That confidence created delay. And in your career, the same thing happens. This has always worked for me until it doesn't. So lesson number 2 is middle layers decide everything. Nokia didn't fall at the top. It failed where the truth got filtered. So if you manage people, you are not a buffer, you are a bridge. Lesson number 3 is psychological safety beats talent. Nokia had talent. Apple had urgency. And teams that speak with honesty wins. Lesson number 4 is past success is a dangerous advisor. What made you valuable once can quietly make you irrelevant later. And that's uncomfortable, but it's real. So when I look at Nokia, I don't see a failed company. I see good people doing their very best inside systems that slowly punish courage. And if you're sitting here in your 40s, competent, experienced, trusted, but quietly wondering, am I still adapting or just surviving? Then Nokia's story isn't history. It's a warning and an invitation, because the biggest risk isn't disruption. It's staying silent while you still have something valuable to say.